another episode of Getting Wokey Going Brokey. I think they managed to reach the accomplished number of episode 2 before people started getting fed up with it. And it is a trend right now that critics love these shows. Like, they absolutely adore them. And the public, not so much. Now, I want to examine a little bit, like, what is the underlying problem, right? Because it's really easy to laugh at what they were doing here, which got a lot of people to tune out. You had the white guy arguing with a black guy, and the police officer pulls the gun on the black guy because, you know, like, I guess that's normal in the United States. Like, I really assume that's the case. If you're a black person and you raise your voice at a white guy, the cop just, you know, it's... See, a lot of people say that the problem with these shows is that they're becoming political. And to an extent, maybe it is, because politics is divisive, okay? Like, if you are going to treat a controversial political subject, chances are you're going to alienate half your audience right off the bat. I mean, if you have a show that's pro-life, you're going to alienate the people that are pro-choice. If you have a show that's pro-environmentalist, you're going to alienate the other people, right? You already risk alienating people. So what most shows used to do was to stay away from controversial topics. For example, in the superhero genre, you would just have a superhero beating up a villain, and that was the show. I mean, in Smallville, for example, they wouldn't ham-fist politics down your throat or political messages. I mean, maybe, you know, I guess it was a little bit cringy at times, when it came to, like, Clark having a girlfriend outside of marriage, and his parents were disavowing that because, well, you know, like, they found out he had sex and it was, like, a big issue. Like, you know, you could get, like, some of those conservative vibes in Smallville, but, like, most episodes were literally just him saving the day. It was like, at school, someone came up with some new superpower, and him and his friends were trying to put a stop to that. Like, that was what Smallville was, and it got successful. It had, like, 7 seasons or something, right? This, however, shows a different type of problem. It's not just the political messages. Because, again, like, you can have a show about politics. It's that the politics don't resonate with the large pool of audience. I mean, I'm going to tell you what would resonate with most people. All right? Talk about the fact that the United States is giving money to banks or to foreign governments during the COVID crisis. You know, like, this is a political issue that most people, like the average Joe, regardless of skin color or whatever, is going to resonate with. It's like, yeah, you know what? That's a little bit fucked up. You know, why don't you talk about a family that lost their business during COVID? Because, like, the government told them to shut down, no money was coming, and they had to pay the mortgage, and they had to fire the staff. You know, like, that's something that would resonate with most people because most people have dealt with that. You know, like, that's politics that it speaks to the average Joe. Like, you don't need to go to a university in order to see it. I mean, that's the type of politics that interests me. Like, don't get me wrong. Maybe other people really don't care about the stuff that I said, but I don't think that the stuff that I said is alienating simply because most people deal with this in their day-to-day life, right? But this type of politics is bizarre. I mean, I'm from Romania, seeing this type of behavior, that a police officer pulls a gun on a black person just because he is yelling at a white guy. Like, even I don't believe that's the case in the United States. Like, maybe that used to be the case historically, but in 2021, with all of the progressive media, with all of the progressive universities, with all of the cities, the major cities being under Democrat control, with all of the Democrat, I find it difficult to believe. I really find it difficult to believe. So when I see something like this, to me, it comes out more as propaganda, more like the type of world that the writers would like to live in, so that they feel like they're punching up. But in reality, it's not. You know, it's really like living in the Soviet Union, and they were still doing the revolution even when the Soviets were in power for 3 decades. And it was still like the workers rising up. But, like, okay, when will the workers finish the rising up? Like, how long does it take for a worker to get off his goddamn chair, you know? But you gotta understand what they mean with this, right? Words like diversity and inclusion, you think they mean something, but in reality, they mean something else completely different. All right, now, diversity, you would think it actually means while getting different opinions, different ideas. No, like diversity means different races, all right? Which, okay, whatever, I don't care. I mean, I like kung fu movies. I like movies that are made in South Korea. Like, I don't care. You know, like, what I care is the character, right? Like the personality, not the race. But as the critical theorists like to say, you shouldn't use the word happens to be black. You should use the word is black, because happens to be black puts universal humanity in front of the identity, which really translates to the fact that the critical theorist has a stereotype of what he thinks black people are like, and a stereotype to what he thinks white people are like, and he wants to hire the stereotype. So it's not even about like hiring the minority, right? Like when Disney says they're a feminist company, they have a stereotype of what a woman is like, and when you have a woman that doesn't fit the mold, like Gina Carano, that's why they fire her, because she doesn't fit the stereotype, right? So that's not real diversity for them. Like real diversity is people that fit the stereotype. And the second thing is the inclusion aspect, right? Like the inclusion aspect would make you think that they actually want more people to enjoy the hobby. The way they go around it is that they think people don't join the hobby because it's not far left, pretty much. You know, it's like people don't join the hobby because it's not woke. Like they get offended by things that aren't woke, so they tune out. And in order to be inclusive, you have to be super mega woke, like super mega politically correct, which doesn't seem to be in line with reality, right? Like people like offensive stuff. People like South Park, people like Beavis and Butthead, people like things that are offensive because they sell. And if you look at, for example, like Steven Crowder saying a racist joke, which got his video taken down, like Steven Crowder got millions of people following his stuff. Most of the votes were thumbs up. Like the reality does not come into contact with their ideology. Right? And this is why, as long as they have this mentality, they will never make a good show. Again, it's not about politics, right? You can make a good superhero show with politics. Like take the Joker, for example. Why did people like the Joker? Well, because the Joker spoke about a universal story that can be applied to literally anyone from anywhere across the world, regardless of his race or gender. It spoke about the story of a person which had mental illnesses that society turned his back on. And it doesn't try to excuse the Joker's actions, but it does try to explain how we can prevent Jokers from appearing. Like, focus on people's mental health, treat it seriously, right? That was like the overwhelming message. And it also sent the message of what happens when people have enough with poverty, when people are being fed too many lies. I mean, I saw leftists, like people from Antifa, thinking that the Joker is a leftist movie, and I saw right-wingers thinking that the Joker is a right-wing movie. Like, it's literally unifying in a way. It's managing to get people together. It's inclusive, all right? But it's not the type of inclusivity they like, which is why most of the journalists, when Joker came out, they were saying that, oh my God, the Joker is going to cause shootings. It's going to justify the culture of sexism, and Joker is an incel and whatnot, right? Which has nothing to do with the movie, which is why there's a disconnect between the critics and the audience. And this is something that I want to come and talk about. Like, why are the critics considered higher than the audience anyway? Like, a critic isn't a person that's a scientist. He doesn't learn the intricate arts of criticisms. Right? Like, he's just a twat that decides to get a job with The Guardian or The New York Times. And then he gets to criticize movies. That's literally it. There is no difference between a person that actually pays money to see a movie and a critic working at The New York Times. None whatsoever. So if that's the case, why should we consider the critics to be more enlightened, more educated than the actual audience? I mean, you got like 20,000 people that go and purchase a ticket, and then you get 20,000 reviews. I think that's a better indicator whether or not I will happen to like the movie than 20 guys who work at various leftist publications giving their dumb take on the movie. You know, like, the numbers speak for themselves. It's like, one, it's accurate polling. Why do I even care about reviews? I care about reviews because I want to know if I get to spend my money properly or not, if I get to invest my time properly or not. That's the whole point. And yeah, like 20,000 people giving me their opinion and then using that aggregate score. That aggregate score is more informative to me whether or not I will happen or not to like the movie. Very rarely are the audience wrong. Like, very rarely have I seen, this is the audience score, and it was like a perfect 9 or a 10, and I went and I didn't like the movie at all. Or the vice versa, where the audience said the movie is garbage, I went and I enjoyed it a lot. Never happened. Never happened. I think maybe, okay, maybe once or twice, you know, would it. But, yeah, and by the way, like, if you want to create a very interesting show, from the perspective of, I guess, black people in America, Luke Cage is a really good example. Like, they actually had a TV show. And the reason I resonated with Luke Cage is because he was a good person in a very impoverished place. And the people around him were doing bad things because they were born in a very difficult lifestyle. And I can understand that, you know, like, I don't know how it would be like to be born in a family of a single mom, in a place with very limited possibilities. And the chance of me turning out the way I was, if I was born in that circumstance, would probably be different. Which is why I like Luke Cage, which is why its politics was, again, inclusive. Because it doesn't matter, like, there are white people into poverty and born in dangerous neighborhoods. And, you know, you can understand, you can empathize with that. But what I can't empathize is when you feed propagandistic bullshit at me and you're like, oh yes, well, so the cop just pulls out a gun on the black guy because he's raising his voice at the white. Like, get the fuck out. Doesn't that cop live in that community anyway? Like, what do they import the cop from another city? Like, doesn't he have to go home to his wife and kids at the end of the day? Like, if he keeps doing that shit, are there no repercussions? No, seriously, like, I'm thinking in my country, you know, like, you have police officers that are very careful when going and policing people, because they know that if they step out of the line, it's not that they're going to have to go into the courtroom, but they know they're going to have to answer to the community in which they live. I don't know, maybe in America it's different. Like, I'm actually curious. Like, tell me how it's like in America. Do they import cops from different cities to go in there and police? Or is it like people know, like, all right, if you live in the neighborhood, you kind of know who the cops are and you kind of get to know them by name, and, you know, like, there's like a deeper relationship there. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section.